Coming up next on Parent Connection, a conversation with Bruce Morgenstern. Welcome to Parent Connection. Today our guest is Bruce Morgenstern. Thanks for joining us, Bruce.
Thanks, I'm happy to be here today, Teresa.
So, we want to talk today about volunteering, and you were Volunteer of the Year for Anne Arundel County Public Schools.
Yes.
So we're excited to honor you in that way, and really what we wanted to do today is share with our guests some of the all the things that people can do to volunteer and some of the specific programs that you've been involved in and how you got started. So why don't you tell us first, what did you do first to become a volunteer? How did you really start that with the school system?
Sure. I started about 4 years ago, right after I retired. Education's always been very important to me, both in my life and in my work. And to me, it was just natural to want to volunteer with the schools when I retired. So that's where I started.
So where was the first place that you started to volunteer for the schools? Which school?
I started with Annapolis High School. I mean, for two reasons. One of them is that I've been living in Annapolis for 40 years, so kind of natural for me to want to work with a high school in Annapolis. But also, a couple of years ago, I met Eric Elston. Eric is the signature program facilitator for Annapolis High School. We were both in a Leadership Anne Arundel flagship class. And I got to know him and got the first taste of what Signature really was all about, and it sounded very interesting.
So you didn't know anything about the Signature program until you started to volunteer?
Really I didn't. I mean, I just got a little bit of information from Eric, but really got to understand the program once I started working with him. And it's an amazing program because it's a program that brings the community together with the school and provides the students with a skill set that is not part of the normal curriculum.
Well, I know that they have a wonderful program in Annapolis. We also have signature programs all throughout the county. And each school, with the help of the community and the community partners, decide what their signature is going to be, what fits the needs of the school. So that's something that sometimes people don't really understand, or if, like you said, if you've never done it before, you wouldn't even know what a signature is. But that really is something that we do have now at all of our high schools. So we want people to learn about what they are in their community and what they do. Now, what is the signature at Annapolis High School?
At Annapolis High School, it's change engineering. All right, and it sounds like that's a real technical thing, but the technical part, the engineering part of this is really understanding that change doesn't just happen, that there's a process associated with change for change to be effectively implemented. So not only do the students learn about change, but they learn a process to help them in their lives to implement changes. Because changes can be in your job, it can be in your school, it can be in your life. And this helps better prepare them for the changes to come, because most people are very resistant to change.
Exactly.
We're creating a generation of students that embraces change and knows how to do it.
Well, that's wonderful. So what kind of support did you actually give Annapolis High School Signature?
Well, a bunch of different things. I was helpful in bringing in guest speakers. I helped set up field trips for the students to expose them to different environments and different opportunities. And because they were somewhat early in the development of the change program, or change engineering program, I also helped them a little bit with curriculum, because each of the schools with their signature program create courses. They're called exploration courses. And what these courses do is they explore the theme that's associated with the school. So in this case, change engineering.
So after you really got really into the meat of the signature at Annapolis, and I know that they really depend on you for lots of different things, you started actually working at signatures in other schools too, as well, didn't you?
Correct. Yeah, I enjoyed working with Annapolis High School very much, but I did have additional time, and I got to know the signature program people from the from the board, and they invited me up, and I would bring guest speakers, typically nonprofits, up to the board to speak to all the signature program facilitators. And these were nonprofit. This was to create connections between these various nonprofits and the school system, to not only help the schools but also to help the nonprofits. And then after that, I explained to the signature program facilitators I had time and I would really like to volunteer and help all of them.
Which is wonderful. That's exactly what I'm sure they love to hear. Now, some of the support came through the Volunteer Center. How did that work?
Well, the Volunteer Center, we're a 501c3 nonprofit in Anne Arundel County, and what we do is we promote volunteering throughout the county. But an important aspect of volunteering is getting young people involved in volunteering, because our philosophy is if we get them young,
Yes.
then there's a reasonable chance that they're going to enjoy and want to continue volunteering. So one of the things that the Volunteer Center did is we created a student portal on our website. It's very challenging for students, particularly high school students, to get volunteer opportunities.
Yes.
Because they go to a nonprofit and they say, oh, sorry, you have to be 18 or older, and that's true of many of the nonprofits for various reasons that are appropriate. So what we did is the Volunteer Center partners with over 400 nonprofits in Anne Arundel County, and we polled all of them, and we said, we want you to tell us about the volunteer opportunities that you have that are going to be appropriate for high school students. And they provided those, and we have them on our website in a special portal for students so that students can more easily find meaningful volunteer opportunities. Also, as the Volunteer Center, I say our staff, we have a couple of people, but what we do is we'll go out to the schools and talk to various groups like signature classes, but we've also talked to IB programs and other groups, Rotaract clubs in the schools, to talk to them about volunteering and different volunteer opportunities. So we're anxious to get students to volunteer, but we're also, another focus of ours is to support the school system by getting volunteers to come support the schools.
Well, I think that's one of the biggest things that we look to the Volunteer Center for Anne Arundel County to do, because it is that place, kind of the first place, maybe a clearinghouse, so to speak, where volunteers, if I'm just volunteering, maybe like you, somebody was recently retired or somebody just moved to the area and wants to do some volunteering, students, whatever that be, lots of times that's where they're going to start. So I know even in our office with School and Family Partnerships, when we have volunteers, we need volunteers for different things, we'll put it up on the site for the Volunteer Center, because we have found that to be a really great place to look for volunteers, and for volunteers to go and do one-stop shopping of kind of put their likes in and kind of see how it matches.
Right. We like to be a conduit for the schools. One of the things that we do is we help explain to volunteers that no, you don't have to volunteer every single week on Mondays from 9 to 3. That
Yes.
there are many opportunities that are available for just a couple of hours here and there that are very meaningful to the schools and to the students. And so we can help explain that, whereas otherwise people might just hesitate to call up the school system and say, we want to volunteer.
And I think that brings up a really good point, because lots of times people are thinking, I need a specific skill, or what kind of thing do I have to have if I'm going to volunteer? But what did you need to do? Did you have to have any special skills when you started volunteering?
No, not at all. And I try to stress to people, we all have skills.
Yes.
Everybody has, whether they're career-related skills or their life skills. Two of the really great opportunities for volunteering that I like at the schools is most of the schools have career days and they have mock interviews.
Yes.
And career days, oh my God, they are fun. I have to tell you a story. I was invited to Brockbridge Elementary School to talk to 4th and 5th graders about my career. I'm a retired engineer. And so I prepared a presentation, and the presentation, was mostly pictures because I'm talking to 4th and 5th graders.
Right.
And I bring them into the school. And I'll have to tell you, I normally talk to high school students, so I'm used to them totally ignoring me and lucky if I even get eye contact. But I walked in there, and immediately, the students were so excited to get a visitor in their school, and their hands rose up. They had question after question about engineering, about me, about, dear God, almost anything there was. Just that excitement of being there. And there's no doubt that they learned and they found out new things, and it was just a wonderful experience. Oh, and for them too. Because I loved it. I just had a ball talking to them and answering their questions.
And I think that's what, sometimes if we can get the volunteers actually into the schools, they walk away lots of times thinking, I got more out of that than the students did. We want it to be that two-way street.
Yeah.
I always tell people, if they're volunteering, if you actually get into a volunteer situation and you're not really happy with what you're doing, please don't do it the whole year. Tell somebody, because we have so many different things that you can do. And we really want to match people with a volunteer opportunity that is enriching for them and that makes them want to come back to the school every day. And I'm glad you brought up about the students being so excited, because that's one of the really strengths of volunteers. You have different age groups, different people coming in, and they see there's just another person in the community that really cares about my education, that cares about me, that's sharing their life with me, and that's something that we can't pay money for. I mean, that's just really invaluable.
I agree. I'd like to talk about the other thing that I mentioned, which is mock interviews. All the high schools have mock interviews, and anybody who has had a career, has been interviewed before, they can come in and help a young person through that potentially first interview, potentially the first discussion they've had, an important discussion that they've had with an adult that is not their family, is not their teacher, and give them that experience. And just share what it was like to get that first job, or how nervous that they were, to help them, understand simple things like don't put your cell phone on the table. That's a job killer. and don't chew gum, and try and do some eye contact, and don't say like every other word, or things like that. Anybody can look at a child and gently give that kind of advice, and the students, I get thank you notes from them, and the idea is not the thank you notes as much as hearing back that I made a difference, that I helped them, and they're a little less nervous perhaps for the next interview that they have to do.
And I know that's really important. Just like you said, if I've never done an interview before and I walk in, really talking to them about making eye contact, because if they're nervous and they're young, that's something that sometimes isn't automatic for everyone. Talking to them about shaking the person's hand and introducing yourself. And I love in the times that we live in right now, we have to talk about technology. And no, don't put your phone on the table, and please have it turned off.
Absolutely.
Maybe not even on vibrate, please. We don't want it shaking in your in the shirt or whatever you have on, but really talking to them about the importance of that, because that's something with their peers that they're not used to doing. So we need to make sure that they have those skills when they go out to interview. So like you said, that's a great place for someone if they just want to dip their toe into volunteering. It's a good opportunity.
Exactly, because you're talking about spending somewhere around 2 hours on one day. All right. Typically, your employer is going to be happy that you're doing it because you're doing something very positive for the community. Today's employers are a little bit more sensitive to the needs, particularly of younger employees that are starting, where they want to have some community engagement. They want to be proud of their company, represent their company, doing something that's very positive. So it's very very reasonable for you to ask your employer for a couple hours off to do an event like this.
And I know that when I have done mock interviews as well with students, and one of the things, you're an outside person. You're, in their eyes, a professional. They're not listening to the teacher. They're, sometimes the teacher can say it over and over. Your parents can tell you before you go into the interview. And of course, sometimes they listen and sometimes they don't. But when they here they're thinking this is a professional. So I know with some of the people I would interview afterwards, after told them all the good things, you would say, now you want to think about sitting up straighter. You kind of came in and slouched, and
Right.
you want to put on that. That's not real professional. So let's think about that. And I think they take the criticism a little bit better from an outside person.
Absolutely, I agree, and the teachers tell me that afterwards also.
Yes.
They'll come up and say, well, I told them all those things, but now they believe it.
Right. Now you've done lots of volunteer things, lots. What are some other interesting things you've done? I know you've done some things with project management or project planning, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, exactly. Not only was I an engineer, but I was also a project manager. I worked up at Air Inc. Up the street from the board. And as a project manager, not only did I run projects, but I also taught other project managers how best practices associated with projects. And I found out about all these projects that students have to do. Some of them are full semester or full year projects. And so typically they come up with a project and they start working on it without any planning, without any true understanding of what the end objective is. Or what the schedule might be, or if they need resources, what resources they need and how to get them. And that sometimes presents tremendous challenges along the way for them to actually successfully complete the project. So I took a course that's typically several days and squished it down into an hour. I've taught the class. I started at Broadneck. That was the first one that asked me to. Their signature is environmental literacy. So I created a project that was environmentally related, and we talked through a project planning process. And it was funny. It was the first time that I had done it, so I'd wondered if I really got through to the students.
Right.
So as I was walking out, the teacher was talking to the class and saying, oh, by the way, next period I'm not going to be here. You're going to have a substitute and you're going to watch a video. And one of the students raised his hand and said, no, we need to plan our projects. So that was fun. I really got a feeling that it was really good. And actually since then I've taught the class at I believe 3 different high schools, which of course had different signature programs, and so we did different kinds of projects. And I actually taught it at middle school, at 2 of the middle schools in the county. That was interesting. There's a lot of energy in middle school.
There certainly is. But I think that's so important because that is a skill set that students need forever.
Yes.
Planning, you have to think about, like you said, what's your objective, what are the steps, what resources. That's wonderful to share, and to have a professional who actually did that for a living to come in and share it, that's invaluable to the students and the teachers, because it's going to make their job easier if they follow that advice.
Yeah. And I agree with you, because I did use personal examples with the students as well, because when it comes to talking about a budget, there's no real money involved, but what they have to do is they have to budget their time. So I explained to them, well, you have to sleep, you have to eat, you want to spend some time with your friends, you have to go to school, you have to do homework.
Right.
So budgeting is something that's really important to learn, not just for executing the project, but just for essentially living your life.
Well, you've done some things with Glen Burnie High School. Tell us about the emergency response training that you did with them.
Okay, so that was fun too. Glen Burnie High School's signature is public service. And so they were a natural for another organization I work with, which is the Anne Arundel Annapolis Community Emergency Response Team. What this nonprofit does is we train community members on emergency preparedness and basic emergency response. So we teach people how you would handle a small fire, how you would do what we call light search and rescue, how you would provide basic first aid. In the event of a large-scale situation that would occur in Anne Arundel County, how you would protect your neighbors, your community, and your family. And this is applicable to young people as well. So we wanted to provide the same kind of training to high school students. It's been done in other communities around the country. And we picked Glen Burnie, and we held the class, and the class was essentially the same class we provided to adults, And it included a disaster scenario at the end at the Fire Training Academy up in Millersville, where we had live victims who were made up with moulage, which is makeup to make you look like you have an injury, and the students had to respond to this disaster. And real quickly, this was great. One of the victims was an older woman, and she had this gaping wound on her neck, and she had to be transported to the triage area to be taken care of. And one of the Glen Burnie students, totally into the scenario, gently held a gauze pad to her neck and quietly talked to her the entire time she was being transported to make sure she was comfortable as she was moving forward. I think that was a good skill that we taught that young person.
I think so too, and to really get hands-on. That's really neat for them to have that experience.
Right.
So now you were just everywhere in the county. So you've done some things with Meade High School too.
Also.
So tell me about some of your work there.
Well, first of all, we're looking to expand the emergency response training at Meade, and we're going to be doing that actually by training teachers, so that the teachers then can continue our work training students.
Great.
So that's one aspect, because part of Homeland Security is emergency management, emergency response, so another really good application. But also, I'm part of their integrated community stakeholder team. The ICST is, think of it like a business partnership, getting community members very directly involved in the school, and with a purpose of helping to drive the curriculum related to signature. So we get involved in a lot of activities, including strategic planning. I led a strategic planning initiative at Meade High School to look at the next 3 years, to look at the growth in their area, to understand what the needs might be and how we can evolve the program to be even more successful.
Well, you mentioned something about field trips earlier. So tell me a little bit about what you've done in regards to field trips, or what kind of volunteer opportunities there have been around field trips.
Sure. One of the things that I did last year is I helped organize trips for 3 of the high schools to go to Anne Arundel County Police and Fire. These are job opportunities that I would say that most high school students are not necessarily thinking about, whether it's because of how they interact with police and fire in their communities, or just a narrow view of that the jobs are police and fire and nothing else. There's actually an extraordinary number of jobs associated with both organizations. And both organizations are recruiting, and both organizations in particular are very anxious to be representative of their communities. So we brought groups up there, and of course, the beginning is a recruitment talk. But the recruitment talk is one geared really directly to them by recruiters who can relate really well to high school students and to the communities in which they live in. But after the recruitment speech, we made sure that it was not only interesting but fun. So on the police side, we took them to the crime lab so they could see that no, it's not exactly like TV. It's really a little bit different, and they get an idea that crimes are not solved in 30 minutes.
Right.
We also took them to see SWAT and the very cool equipment that they have, and of course the K9 squad who can avoid seeing, you want to see the dogs. It's wonderful.
Right.
And on the fire side, they learned a little bit about CPR, and they were even able to hold a fire hose and spray down the side of a building to get an idea of what it must be like to be a firefighter. And of course, donning the gear and understand in the heat to understand what it feels like to have so much additional equipment on. So it was a great day and a lot of fun. Oh, even for the kids too. Yes, I had a good time as well.
Sure.
This is why it's great to volunteer. I got to participate in it. I got to do all their activities, and I just had a blast. But yes, the students had a good time
Well,
too.
I think that brought up a really important part, because when we think of an organization, just like you said, whether police, fire, I know certainly with education, people think, oh, education, so if I'm not a teacher, what would I do? But we have so many jobs that everything from an electrician, plumbers that work for us, of course, cafeteria workers, our bus drivers, people that work at central office, clerical support, custodial. and it just goes on and on. I mean, we need people in accounting. So there are lots of times people don't think, especially if you're in school and you haven't had those experiences yet, you don't know what all those background jobs are. So getting there and actually hearing it firsthand and getting to go, I think those field trips actually to the locations really have to be eye-opening for the students.
Absolutely, it really is. And another thing that we tell the students is, going back to the volunteering side, is volunteering is a great opportunity to find out what you want to do and what you don't want to do. So
Right.
you can start a volunteer opportunity and find out that maybe you volunteer with an environmental organization like the Chesapeake Bay Foundation or the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, and you might find out, oh my God, I love working with the environment. This might be a career possibility, and then you go back to school and you say, what can I do to change the courses that I take, or how can I engage in some way to be better prepared for that type of occupation?
I remember in middle school, I was sure I wanted to be a nurse, basically because my best friend wanted to be a nurse.
Okay.
I thought that's what I want to do too. So we became candy stripers
Mm-hmm.
at the local hospital. And very quickly I realized that I could not be around blood or needles. Immediately I thought, this is not the career choice for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, like you said, by volunteering, I knew right away that was not going to be the fit that was going to work for me. So I think that really is what we want our students. We want our students, while they're in school, to get all these opportunities so that they know what they do want when they come out, or at least some of the areas. But I think the question that all of our viewers are probably, as they're watching this, thinking, okay, how does he possibly do all of this? Because you really are, I don't know how you worked before, because I would imagine you're busier now than even when you were working. You really are, a volunteer extraordinaire. But how do you find time to do all of that?
Well, Teresa, it's simple. I make the time. I decide that it's important. It's so important. This is our next generation that's coming up, and we want them to succeed. It's important that they succeed.
Yes.
We're hoping to be around while they succeed. So there's an African proverb that everybody knows, and that it takes a village to raise a child. And that's what we're trying to say from the Volunteer Center is, please volunteer with the schools, and let's help raise all of our children so that all of them can be successful.
That's perfect. That's exactly the message we hope to get there. Thank you, Bruce, so much for everything that you do for our students and for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Thank you for coming today and sharing it with us. We really appreciate having you here.
It was absolutely a pleasure, and I hope we've encouraged some other people to volunteer.
Me too.
And with a little commercial, if they go to www.aacvc, Anne Arundel County Volunteer Center.org, you'll find some great volunteer opportunities, which include volunteering with Anne Arundel County Public Schools.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And thank you for joining us. Until next time.